Hello friends, welcome to the hollylolly channel. Thank you for your constant support and interest in our episodes. Today we will touch on a topic that, despite the generally accepted opinion about the safety of Japan, unfortunately remains an acute social problem. Harassment on public transport, known as Chikan. What is Chikan? The term Chikan in Japan means inappropriate behavior, most often occurring on public transport. This may include unwanted contact, pressing in a crowd, or other improper actions. Although the term does not have an official definition, in the Japanese legal system it describes actions that violate several laws. Unfortunately, there are often cases where offenders try secretly taking inappropriate photos. Let's turn to the historical context. The problem of Chikan became noticeable in Japan in the 1992, although, of course, cases of harassment on public transport had happened before. In the past, such actions were often perceived as a nuisance rather than a serious crime. However, over time, public awareness of the problem grew, and measures were taken to address it. Let's turn to the statistics and scale of the problem. In 2023, 2,254 arrests for harassment were recorded in Japan, of which 1,321 cases occurred on trains and at stations. According to a survey conducted by the Tokyo government in 2024, 56.3% of women and 15.2% of men reported that they had become victims of Chikan on trains or at stations. Let's talk about the role of the police. The reaction to a case of Chikan largely depends on the local police and the legal system. In some cases, victims face distrust or insufficient support from law enforcement agencies. This may hinder the filing of complaints and reduce the level of trust in the system as a whole. However, it should be noted that these figures may not reflect the full picture, and surely they don't, since studies show that many victims do not report what happened. According to a survey conducted by the Tokyo government in 2024, 80.4% of victims do not turn to the police or station staff, often due to fear, shame, or the belief that this will not lead to results. Let's talk about the process of including incidents in the statistics. For a case of Chikan to be included in official statistics, several conditions must be met. The first is the filing of a complaint. The victim must officially report the incident to the police. The second is identification of the suspect. The identity of the alleged offender must be established. The third is the completion of the investigation. A full investigation must be conducted sufficient for punishment to be assigned. Imagine the situation. A girl is standing during rush hour and someone is behind her. She didn't even see his face. Such a complaint will not even be accepted because the person cannot be identified. She had the courage to go to the police, but since they could not identify him, this case is not counted as harassment. However, even if all these conditions are met, not all cases end up in the statistics. Only about 37% of reported cases reach the stage of prosecution. Let's compare this crime with others. It is interesting to note that in Japan, the number of reports to the police about bicycle thefts or traffic violations is significantly higher than about sexual harassment on public transport. This emphasizes how much the Chikan problem remains hidden and underestimated. Friends, if this topic is important to you and interesting, if you want to know more, please support this video, like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment whether you or your acquaintances have faced such situations. What, in your opinion, can be done to solve this problem? And let's talk about where this problem came from. The density of the Japanese subway at rush hour is simply the disappearance of personal space. In Tokyo trains, up to 200% of the nominal capacity of a car can be loaded. People are pressed against each other so tightly that you cannot always reach the handrail. The crowd itself holds you, and you will not fall. Such a tight gathering of people in a confined space became an ideal zone of impunity, where the anonymity of the crowd equals protection for those who violate others' boundaries, where loudly declaring that someone is touching you is the same as exploding an emotional grenade in a society where it is not customary to raise your voice. Here we add the gender paradox. Despite its outward restraint, Japan has long remained a patriarchal society, where a woman should endure and not create problems. Harassment was often devalued as a small misunderstanding, and men were often forgiven more, especially if he was an office worker and just made a mistake. Equality is officially declared, but in everyday situations, things are still heavily skewed. What can we say if even in court proving harassment is not easy? And sometimes, the victim herself became the object of doubt, silence, which rooted the problem. Although Chikan became a mass phenomenon in the 1992, this does not mean that it did not exist before. It's just that such cases were not talked about. It was considered a shameful topic, easier to remain silent about than to admit. The victim was afraid of being accused of begging for attention. Witnesses turned away, and the system did not encourage reporting. Silence became not just a consequence of trauma, but a social habit. The problem of education about relationships and gender inequality in Japan. One of the reasons for the prevalence of Chikan incidents is insufficient education about relationships in Japanese schools. The national curriculum does not provide students with a comprehensive understanding of sexuality and related topics. As a result, many young people receive limited knowledge about consent, boundaries, and respect for others. In addition, Japan faces serious problems of gender inequality. In 2021, the country ranked 120th out of 156 inches, the global gender gap ranking. It remained in last place among the G7 countries. This reflects deep structural problems, including low representation of women in politics and economics. After World War II, the Japanese government promoted sex education based on abstinence, which created a culture where discussing sexuality became a kind of taboo. This hinders open conversations about sex, about consent, and contributes to the spread of misconceptions and stereotypes. Altogether, these factors, insufficient sex education and gender inequality, create an environment in which Chikan incidents are less likely to be challenged or punished. Overcoming these problems requires a comprehensive approach, including reform of the education system and the promotion of gender equality at all levels of society. Japan as a country without sex. Statistics and reasons. There is an alarming trend in Japan. A significant number of married couples live without sex relations. According to a survey by the Japan Family Planning Association conducted in 2024, 48.3% of married couples had not had sexual contact in the past month. This is a new record and reflects the growth in the number of marriages without intimacy in the country. Other studies confirm this trend. A survey of 3,000 people showed that 43.9% of respondents are in marriages without intimacy, and another 24.3% in nearly sexless ones, which in total is 68.2%. The reasons are stress, fatigue, and lack of time. One of the main reasons for the decline in intimate life is high workload at work. Japanese workers often face long working days exceeding 40 hours a week despite legal limits. This leads to chronic fatigue and reduced energy for intimacy. Women are particularly affected. 21% of them cited fatigue after work as the reason for the absence of sexual relations, compared to 9.4% of men. Consequences: demographic crisis and social change. The decline in sexual activity in marriages is directly related to the drop in fertility in Japan. The fertility rate in the country is 1.26 children per woman, which is significantly below the population replacement level of 2.1. This raises concerns about the future demographic and economic condition of the country. In response to these challenges, alternative forms of marriage are emerging, such as friendship marriages, where partners unite for social and economic benefits, avoiding intimacy. Thus, a combination of factors, including high workload, fatigue, and social expectations, leads to a decline in intimacy among Japanese married couples, which in turn affects the demographic situation in the country. In Japan, the problem of Chikan is considered not only an offense, but also a possible manifestation of psychological dependence. Some experts believe that repeated cases of harassment may be linked to compulsive behavior in crowded places, that is, a disorder in which a person experiences emotional reactions from invading personal space in public. Studies have shown that the recidivism rate among sex offenders in Japan is high. About 30% of them commit repeat crimes within 5 years after release. This indicates the need for a comprehensive approach to treatment and rehabilitation of such offenders. Why do Chikan victims in Japan often remain silent? Japanese society has a deep culture of shame and collectivism that prevents victims of inappropriate behavior from openly talking about their experiences. The fear of standing out, of being accused of provocation, or of causing public condemnation often forces women to remain silent. Many victims experience doubts. What if I am wrong? What will others think? This is connected with the reluctance to disturb group harmony and the fear of being rejected by society. Now let me tell you the real story of Shiori Ito and her struggle for justice. Shiori Ito, a Japanese journalist, became a symbol of the Me Too movement in Japan after she publicly accused influential TV host Noriyuki Yamaguchi of forced encounter. Despite the presence absence of evidence, including video recordings and testimonies, the police refused to open a criminal case, citing insufficient evidence. Ito faced public condemnation, threats, and accusations that she did not behave like a victim. Her experience reflects the deep problems in Japanese society, where victims of serious misconduct often face distrust and stigmatization. The culture of shame and collectivism in Japan creates an environment in which Chikan victims feel isolated and unable to seek help. Shiori Ito's story emphasizes the need for changes in public perception and the legal system in order to provide support and justice for victims. How reporting to the police goes. Questions and barriers. When a Chikan victim does decide to go to the police, she faces a number of difficulties. First, she must provide a detailed description of the incident, including time, place, and circumstances. Then comes the questions. Why didn't you resist? Why didn't you scream? Can you accurately describe the suspect? Where exactly did he touch you? Such questions can cause the victim to feel shame and guilt. In addition, to initiate a case, identification of the suspect and the presence of evidence are required, which in the conditions of a crowded subway is extremely difficult. This leads to many cases going unpunished. The culture of silence and fear of false accusations. In Japanese society, there is a strong culture of collectivism and conflict avoidance. Women often fear standing out or causing inconvenience, which leads to silence about cases of Chikan. On the other hand, men fear false accusations, which can destroy their careers and personal lives. There are known cases where men were falsely accused of Chikan and subsequently lost both their jobs and social status. This creates an atmosphere of fear on both sides. Victims fear not being heard, and potentially innocent people fear being unfairly punished. Thus, the problem of Chikan in Japan is aggravated not only by the actions of offenders, but also by cultural barriers that hinder effective fight against this phenomenon. Let me add to this topic why Chikan victims in Japan often do not go to the police. Despite efforts to combat Chikan, many victims still do not report harassment. According to a study published in 2024, about 80% of victims do not go to the police or transport authorities. The main reasons include fear. As I already mentioned, fear of causing inconvenience. 40% of respondents said they did not want to create problems and considered the incident not serious enough. Another 40% believed that the incident was not worth reporting. These data emphasize the cultural barriers that prevent victims from seeking help. Additional reasons for unwillingness to report Chikan. In addition to the factors above, there are other reasons why a victim does not go to the police. Fear of revenge. The victim is afraid that the accused may retaliate for the complaint. Also, difficulties in identification. In crowded trains, it is difficult to accurately determine and describe the attacker. Fear of being misunderstood. Due to cultural stereotypes, women are afraid they will be blamed for provoking or exaggerating the situation. These factors create additional obstacles for victims in seeking justice. The problem of false accusations and their consequences. In Japan, there is also concern about false accusations of misconduct. Although such cases are rare, they can have serious consequences for the accused. Loss of job and social status. An accusation of Chikan can lead to dismissal and public condemnation. Legal consequences. Even in the absence of evidence, the accused may face legal proceedings. Psychological pressure. Fear of false accusations leads some men to avoid traveling on crowded trains or to purchase insurance against such situations. This atmosphere of fear on both sides, among victims and among potentially innocent people, complicates the fight against the problem of Chikan. Thus, a complex of cultural, social, and legal factors contributes to the fact that the problem of Chikan in Japan remains relevant and requires a comprehensive approach for its solution. Countermeasures against Chikan in Japan, from train cars to badges. Japanese society is actively introducing various measures to combat the Chikan problem. These initiatives are aimed at protecting passengers and raising awareness of the issue. Women-only cars. Since the early 2000s, Japan has introduced cars intended exclusively for women, especially during rush hours. These cars are marked with special signs and are available on many subway and commuter train lines. However, despite this, men sometimes enter these cars. The reasons may be different. Some do not notice the signs, others do it intentionally. It is important to note that the rules for using such cars may vary depending on the region and time of day. Posters and information campaigns. At stations and on trains, there are often posters with appeals such as "Don't be a Chikan" and "Say it loudly." These campaigns aim to raise awareness and encourage victims to report harassment. However, some critics note that such messages can shift responsibility onto the victims rather than the offenders. Mobile protection app. Mobile apps such as DigiPolice have been developed to allow victims to report harassment. The app can display on-screen messages asking for help or emit loud sounds to attract the attention of others. Anti-Chikan badges. In 2015, a high school student named Takako faced daily harassment. She was very scared, but she came up with and created a homemade badge with the inscription, "Chikan is a crime. I am not afraid to report to the police." Her initiative received wide support, and now such badges can be purchased and worn as a symbol of resistance against harassment. Anyone can encounter this problem, not only in Japan, but in any other country. It's just more common in Japan. I also face this problem a little. In a Japanese bus, during rush hour, the buses were crowded. One elderly man very politely let me pass. I went through, then, at the next station, he was going to get off, and supposedly, while leaving, he grabbed me inappropriately. Firstly, my Japanese is very poor. I needed to quickly figure out what to do, but I understood that this could not continue, so I had to react immediately. I found nothing better than just to shout "gomenasai," which translates as "excuse me." I shouted it loudly so everyone there could hear, because I could not think of anything else at that moment. I understood that a reaction was important to draw the attention of others to this gentleman. In the end, this man pushed everyone aside, ran out, and then people avoided me, even though it was rush hour. Everyone avoided me, and I thought, well, that's fine. I didn't really look at them either. I thought I would see these people for the first and perhaps last time in my life, so it was okay. My message to you is, don't be afraid to make noise. You need to ask others for help. The world is not without good people, as they say. Let's talk about recommendations for protection against Chikan. As I said, you should at least shout Chikan. This word will attract the attention of others and may scare off the offender. Next, if you are in Japan and traveling by subway, go to the women's car. If it is available, it may provide additional safety. Also notify the driver or station staff. Many trains are equipped with emergency call buttons. Of course, I understand that in Japanese society this is difficult to imagine, but still, if you are a more open personality, you can do this too. You can also use mobile apps like DigiPolice, which you can download in advance to your phone, allowing you to report problems. Also, if possible, avoid vulnerable places in the car. Try not to stand at the doors or in the connection areas between cars, where it is easiest for the offender to hide. In the connection area, he can more easily hide from prying eyes, and at the door, it is easier for him to escape. Of course, if possible, it is better to be in the center of the car, where there are more passengers. These measures and recommendations are aimed at creating a safe environment for all passengers and reducing cases of Chikan on Japan's public transport. To sum up, I would like to say that we deeply respect Japan, a country of incredible culture of safety and politeness, but even in the most developed societies, there are topics that are difficult to talk about. Chikan is not just a term. It is a real problem that affects not only women but society as a whole. It is important not to be silent, not to be ashamed, and not to consider this a trifle that you can simply put up with. It is important to support those who decide to speak and to create an environment where being heard is the norm, not the exception. Yes, Japan is beginning to change their badges, women-only cars, campaigns, apps, but the path to real change is only beginning, and each raised topic, each story, is a step toward that future. Friends, thank you very much for watching this video to the end. Please support our channel with a like, subscribe, and write in the comments what you think about this topic. Maybe you have encountered something similar, or you have something to add. Your support is very important. See you in the next episodes, and may your road always be safe. Bye!